Hello, folks. Welcome to Radio Espial, episode 61. Now, some good news. We've gone over the 3,000 subscribers. So thanks very much to all for your support, for subscribing, for tuning in, and for your lovely comments under a lot of the videos. Very, very encouraging there, and that's much appreciated there, folks. So thanks for that. This episode is about Missing Persons Day in Ireland 2024. Also known as National Missing Persons Day, but considering it brings in the north of Ireland as well, it's simply been called Missing Persons Day much of the time this year. Now, Missing Persons Day is hosted by the Department of Justice. It's an annual commemorative day for families and friends to remember their missing loved ones. Now, Missing Persons Day also provides a nationwide platform to appeal to the public for information on missing persons. Very important as well. So to mark the event, a commemorative ceremony is held featuring spoken contributions from family members of missing persons, as well as speeches from the Minister for Justice, Helen McENTEE, TD, and Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, and some other contributors who work to resolve missing persons cases. Now, Missing Persons Day is an all-Ireland event, and families from Northern Ireland are welcomed along with their support organisations also. And earlier in that week, which was last week, the day was the 4th of December, President Higgins lit a candle at Áras an Uachtaráin to remember those who are missing. Now, there's events on for the week. There's a week designated for it now, and the Missing Persons Day was the 4th of December. It's always on the first Wednesday of December. So I was lucky to attend and privileged to attend National Missing Persons event in Croke Park this year with retired Metropolitan Police Detective Catherine Costello. Now, Catherine is extremely dedicated and knowledgeable. She's an encyclopedic knowledge of cases, missing person cases, murder cases, and she's independently investigated countless cases herself from first principles by going back to the basics and starting from scratch with some of them as well. So sincere thanks to Catherine for liaising and arranging this for Radio Espial, all the information she shared, and introducing me to many people and making connections and our company on the day as well. So very grateful to Catherine for that, and we had a great day there in Croke Park in Dublin. Now, National Missing Persons Day is a very solemn occasion for the families of missing persons in Ireland, and it's also very, very sobering because, seeing all those people and hearing their stories, and the roll of names, a very, very long roll of names of missing people there as well. And even though this event run every year since 2013, sadly, does not get the coverage from the mainstream media that it should get or deserves at all. And putting it bluntly, I think the apathy from the mainstream media is very frustrating. I mean, last year there was little to no coverage. I mean, I wrote 2 letters into the Sunday Independent. I mean, you'd at least expect from some of the newspapers there'd be sort of a prelude to it, and then the event, and then afterwards a review. But there was none of that. I wrote 2 letters to Sunday Independent about this, about it receiving no coverage, and the first one was not published at all, and the first paragraph, the second one was. I also, the only time in my life I ever rang into RT Radio's Live Line, presented by broadcaster Joe Duffy, after last year's event as well, to say that this important day should be highlighted, and was going to say that people can still watch the live stream that was there to watch, but they never rang back. And in fact, they actually spent nearly half an hour on some woman in New York who needed someone to mind her dog while she was jet setting home to Dublin for Christmas and getting her lingus on the phone and all the rest of it. And so I mean, yeah, that was disappointing, and I think again demonstrates a certain apathy towards this important stuff and grave stuff. So for an event as important as this, given it's a national day and international event in some countries, and takes in North of Ireland as well, the fact a week is now designated for it, remembering the missing, we should really have events springing up all over the country, each highlighting specific missing persons case in that area and the bigger picture. So I mean, let's see what we can all do next year to make that happen in the right direction there. Now, Catherine and I both got early trains to Euston Station. They were delayed, but we got down to Conley Station smoothly enough, and then walked up to the event location in Croke Park, arriving shortly after 10 a.m. Now, there was tea and refreshments laid on, beautiful venue, plenty for all there, lovely refreshments and everything laid on, and plenty of space, minimal queues. It was a very comfortable place and venue set up there, and things got started shortly after 11 then. We met Tosh Lavery, very dedicated professional, charismatic guy who tirelessly worked, as a search diver on countless cases. So he was he was a huge part of a lot of cases there with his diving. And we quite a while with Minister for Justice Helen McENTEE, and she was very personable and engaging. And she asked us who we were and listened to us, and it was so that was a that was great to get the time with her as well. Now, Catherine informed her about Professor Ella Aronsman, head of UCC's School of Public Health. She's also a research professor in the School of Public Health and chief scientist in the National Suicide Research Foundation, University College Cork. And Catherine told her about the professor's work on ascertaining if a missing person likely took their life or not as well. She's done great work on that as well. So she shared that with Minister McENTEE. I told her about what we do at Radio Espial, focusing on facts and the victims and the families, and also raised concern of the lack of media coverage, like what I discussed there a minute ago, and asked her to try and get it out there more next year and this year even, and highlight lesser known cases as well. And she listened to both of us, and she assured us we get it out with the media there, and more of the media as well. Like I said, she listened to us both, and so sincere thanks to her for her time there as well. So we'll have an insert from Helen McEntee there in a minute. So just Mick, initial thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with you as regards. This has been going. It's been going 2011, 2012. Yeah, 11 years.
This is the 12th one this year. Yeah,
and really, I only became aware of it in the last 3 or 4 years. Pretty much since our primary focus on Radio Espial came to missing and murder cases, and if I didn't and wasn't aware as much about this event every December, and it's both a national event in Ireland and it's an international event as well in many countries as well, and some have extended it for an entire week. So if I didn't know about it 3 or 4 years ago, I don't know how many people would have known about it, and I can't get my head around why, particularly an event which is hosted by the Department of Justice, isn't getting more attention. And we said it last year, I think, when we covered the case, and we're just repeating what we said last year because nothing has changed. And all we can do, I think, is hope that the Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, will take on board our feedback to her about the event, that more needs to be done to escalate it and highlight it for it. And I know you're going to talk about that, that we should have not just national events but provincial and events within certain areas, particularly where there are people that have gone missing in a local community, where there's a guarded presence that week in that community, open and willing to take information confidentially, that kind of thing, that can help. But yeah, Brian, thanks for all your work on this. Yeah, let's get into our introduction and hear what Helen McEntee had to say. The other thing I would say is, obviously there are developments, and we mentioned this before about that database, and she's going to talk a little bit about it as well.
Thank you very much, Mary. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, family members, friends, invited guests, participants. I want to acknowledge our Garda Commissioner and indeed Detective Chief Superintendent Fisher as well. It is such an honour and really a pleasure for me to be here this morning. And I want to maybe start by acknowledging, as I think Mary has, that today, and to recognise really that it is a day of profound emotion, I think, for so many people. And I have had an opportunity to meet with many of you, not unfortunately all of you this morning, but I think we need to acknowledge at the outset, we all experience, I think, loss in our life. We all will at some stage experience loss, and it can be challenging and difficult, but to grieve a loved one, a family member or a friend, someone who has gone missing, it is different, and it is a different kind of loss and grief, and one that anyone who hasn't gone through it can only imagine, and can only imagine that it is a very raw grief that doesn't allow for closure. It is a lingering grief that really refuses to go away, and it's a restless grief because of the fact that you have so many questions that you cannot get answers to. So I know that for so many of you this is a very difficult day, and indeed even coming here today may have been very difficult. And for those who are here for the first time, I welcome you here today, and I'm glad that you're here. Missing Persons Day can be as difficult as the anniversary on which they went missing, perhaps a birthday or another special day that you share with or shared with your loved one. But for others today, and I think certainly I get that sense, today is a really positive day. Today is a very important day. It's an opportunity for you to meet with so many other families. Many of you have gotten to know each other so well over the last number of years. It's an opportunity to share stories, to talk about your loved ones, to remember your loved ones, to make sure that they are never forgotten, but also to highlight the fact that they are missing, and to use this day and this week indeed as an opportunity to try and reignite maybe somebody's memory, or to spark something that might lead to a clue or lead to some bit of information that might help find your loved one. Whatever your experience is today, whatever you are feeling today, Missing Persons Day, as I said, above all, brings you together. It is a unique group of people, each and every one of you who share a bond, and I'm sure that you wish that you didn't share that bond, but you do. And I think the fact that it is founded on that tragedy and loss, there is at the same time a comfort to that as well. Missing Persons Day was first held back in 2013, so 11 years ago, and I know it feels much longer for many of you, but it really has become a fixture on the Justice calendar, and a really, really important day for so many of us in the department.
So that was Mr. for Justice Helen McENTEE introduction there. No, she also said later on in that, she said, I want to thank all of the contributors to today's ceremony and all those who have supported Missing Persons Day since its inception. My special thanks goes to the families of missing people who are speaking at the ceremony this year. Now, just a quick summary then, we'll just get into the review there. So a quick summary then on the speakers that were at the event this year. Now, you can check out the full stream on the Department of Justice YouTube channel, so that's great. They've made that available, same as they did last year. So, and please look at the full stream and share it out, and try and make as many people aware as possible there. So I'm not going to read the whole transcript out, obviously. We'll have a few snippets as we go there, and the description is in the video link is in the description there as well, folks. Now, the speakers included Mr. for Justice Helen McENTEE, who we just heard from, Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, and Detective Chief Superintendent Lindsay Fisher from the PSNI, that's the Northern Ireland Police Service. She also spoke. And Chris O'Donovan, Search Coordinator for the Cork City Missing Persons Search and Recovery. They do great work down in Cork there as well, and beyond. Kathleen O'Sullivan of the Coroner Operations and Policy Team within the Department of Justice also. She spoke about the Unidentified Remains Database, the Human Remains Database rather, that's the UHR database, and we'll have more on that later. Very important stuff, so we'll have more on that later as well. Hilary Clark of Forensic Science Ireland, FSI, spoke about DNA profiling. And the Minister of State in the Department of Justice, James Brown, also spoke. And then there was an optional session in the afternoon with psychotherapist Joy Winterbottom. Now, the event was well punctuated by music from the choir from Loretto Abbey Secondary School in Dalkey, and they did two performances during the event. There was a young cellist did a nice performance there as well, and the main session was concluded with a nice version of Giuseppe Verdi's Slaves Chorus from Nabucco by the Garda Band at the end of the first session as well, and that was well executed. So again, obviously the focus of the day there is missing persons. So this day was to remember all missing persons, and it's very important to highlight the lesser known cases as well. And there's just so many of those names that, I mean, I hadn't heard of a lot of those names. I'm sure if you look at the roll of names, you won't know about a lot of them. So all those people, particularly the lesser known cases, really need to be remembered and highlighted to see can anything give to try and help solve these cases for their families. Now, just to mention, we remember Jimmy O'Neill, Ireland's longest recorded missing person, and he disappeared from Waterford City almost 77 years ago in December 1947 when he was only 16 years old. Now, Jimmy O'Neill was born 26 November 1931, so he'd be 93 if he was alive now. And he worked for a shipping company in the area that ran routes from Waterford to Liverpool, and he vanished without trace. Now, there were suggestions he stowed away or went to Liverpool or even as far away as New Zealand, but and there was a newspaper SOSs put out there to see did anyone spot him, but nothing was ever heard from him again. Now, March 2023, his younger brother Frank said Jimmy's name was added to the family headstone in Ballygunner, County Waterford. And just to quote him there, in all aspects of headstones, you might be startled with that idea, but if you have grief in your system, you'll do anything to alleviate that grief. And that's a constant theme in cases like this. And he said the incident devastated his family, broke my parents' hearts, both of them. It killed them in the long run. And that's the things we see again and again there as well. Now, we consider a possibility of a full-time episode in this case in early 2025 for Radio Espial as well. So we'll learn more about Jimmy O'Neill and his case then. Now, we had the pleasure of meeting several family members at the event. Mary Collins Dempsey was present, and it was the 24th anniversary of Mary's cousin Sandra Collins' disappearance in mysterious circumstances in Killala 24 years ago at 11 p.m. on the 4th of December 2000. Now, Sandra's pink fleece jacket was mysteriously planted at the pier in Killala days later by an unknown person or persons. And incidentally, another appeal was issued by the Gardaí last week as well in relation to that near the anniversary. So, very sad case. Hopefully something gives in that and solve it for her family as well. Now, another very little known case, John Connolly, his sister-in-law joined us for tea, Catherine and me for tea. And she told us how John Connolly was her brother-in-law, and he was a student. He was living in Harold's Cross, sharing a room with his brother, and he's been missing for over 50 years now, and he just vanished, and they've no idea what happened to him still. So very, very tough for that family as well. We met Gina Kerry, niece of Imelda Keenan, and Jerry Keenan, Imelda Keenan's brother, and it was great to meet them in person. And Imelda Keenan, as you know, vanished during the Christmas season of 1993 to 94. And we have one episode dedicated entirely to Imelda Keenan, episode 56. There's a substantial amount of episode 53 dedicated to her as well. And then the two updates from January 2024, August 2023, links below there. So Gina spoke about her beloved aunt Imelda and the heartbreak of her disappearance and the family's disappointment with the investigation, and her disappearance had not been upgraded to a murder inquiry. Now, she updated on the case with the hope the latest review brings as well, even though it wasn't updated to a murder inquiry, there is a review being done, and they went out themselves in the last 12 years and beyond, before that even, pulled together, did their own appeals and pulled together and collated a lot of information, which they put into a file and shared with the Gardaí, and that's all being reviewed now. So hopefully this will help progress the case again after the disappointment there. But look, we'll let Gina speak for herself there, and we'll take that insert now.
Good afternoon. My name is Regina KERRY, and I am the niece of Imelda Keenan, who was reported missing from William Street in Waterford City on the 3rd of January 1994. Imelda was 22 years old and originally from Mountmellick in County Laois. At the age of 15, Imelda decided to move to Waterford, where she would be close to her two brothers, Jerry and Ned. At the age of 18, she moved into a little bedsit on William Street, which she shared with her boyfriend at the time, who then went on to be her fiancé. Imelda was 5'3", with long brown hair, big blue eyes. She was petite built, with a smile that would light up the room. Imelda was doing her computer course at the time of her disappearance. On the 3rd of January 1994, it was alleged that Imelda got up that morning. She washed her hair, made her partner a cup of tea, and said she was going to the GPO to get her social welfare payment. She allegedly left the flat between 1 and 1:30 that day. 3 hours later, Imelda's fiancé went to her brother Ned and said that Imelda is missing. Imelda's brother Ned said, "It's only been 3 hours. Let's wait a little longer." But when it got dark, Ned knew that this was not Imelda's character, and he reported Imelda missing to the Gardaí later that evening. Gardaí gathered statements from the family and her fiancé. They didn't do any forensic examination in her flat. A few searches were carried out by the Gardaí, but after a couple of weeks, they stepped down and did not class her disappearance as suspicious. Instead, they speculated that Melda must have ran away or taken her own life. Today, I would like to point out a few inconsistencies. It was said that Imelda allegedly left her flat to go to the GPO to collect her social welfare payment, but that day was a bank holiday Monday. Imelda left her glasses behind, as she always wore, and only took off her photographs. Also, her cigarettes and money were left on the table. There was unopened Christmas presents under Imelda's tree. Her family did not hear from Imelda in a 2-week period leading up to her disappearance. Her fiancé stopped talking to the family and did not communicate with them 2 weeks after she went missing, which meant we found it very hard to get back her belongings, but when we did, after a year, we realised Melda's diary was also missing. Even though Melda did not show any reasons of concern that morning, how did her fiancé know within 3 hours that she was a missing person? Imelda had no passport. She had a few pounds saved in the credit union, which she did not touch, and she also had a cat that she left behind in her little flat. Having a loved one go missing is a profound and gut-wrenching experience. The emotional toll is relentless. A mix of anxiety, confusion, and heartbreak, all coiling together into a constant ache that never quite fades. While the family are going through all the stress, feelings, and emotions that it brings, we depend on our justice system to gather all the facts and evidence surrounding her disappearance. As the days went into months and the months went into years, we were advised to trust the detectives and let them do their job. On the 10th anniversary, we decided to do our own appeal and go to Waterford and hand out posters on the street where Imelda was allegedly last seen. On that day, I met a woman by the name of Rosie, and she told me that she was a friend of Imelda, and that when she went missing, she went to the detective over the case to make a statement, and she was told that he will be in contact with her. But unfortunately, this did not happen. I was heartbroken to hear this, so I reached out to the detectives to arrange for Rosie to make her statement 10 years later. There was an appeal put out every year by the Gardaí on the anniversary of Imelda's disappearance. Their appeal didn't give out much information, only of what she was wearing, what she looked like, and where she was allegedly last seen. The same appeal was repeated for 28 years before my family and I decided to do our own appeals on all social media platforms and put out all the information that we knew was true around the time Imelda disappeared. We had created a Facebook page in 2013 in memory of her, and in 2023, I decided to post pictures of people that Imelda loved and who were in her life at the time of her disappearance. I put up a picture of where she lived and appealed to anybody that had information or recognised the people in the photos to please contact me directly. Once we did this, the information started to come in and people started to talk. We gathered all the information and arranged a meeting with the detectives. This constantly went on for over a year. Jerry and I would have to listen to stories that we had never heard before about Imelda, about her life in Waterford and the people in her life. So this takes us to this year, 2024, her 30th year being classed as a missing person. Our role is to provide support, resources, expertise needed in these situations. The family is already enduring an unimaginable emotional toll. They deserve to have professionals handling the search and investigation, allowing them to focus on healing and hope. In October 2024, we were invited to Waterford Garda Station and we were told that they're going to do a peer review for Imelda. This new development brings a renewed sense of optimism, knowing that experts will be carefully re-examining the evidence, considering fresh perspectives and potentially uncovering new leads. It's a significant step forward in a pursuit of justice and answers, and we are filled with gratitude that her case is receiving this much needed attention. The peer review offers a real opportunity for the truth to come to light, and we remain hopeful that it will bring us closer to understanding what happened to Imelda all those years ago. Today, on National Missing Persons Day, we want to honour Imelda Keenan, not just as a missing person, but as the beautiful young woman she was. A vibrant, loved individual with so much potential and promise. Rather than focusing on the sadness of her absence, let's remember her for the joy she brought to those around her. The smile that lit up the room, and the love she gave. When you think of Imelda or hear her name, let it be with warmth, fondness, and a smile, cherishing the memories of who she truly was. Today, we remember her life and the impact she made, and continue to hope for the day she's brought home. Thank you.
So that was Gina KERRY, niece of Imelda Keenan, and it's a pleasure to meet Gina and her uncle, Imelda's brother, Jerry Keenan, as well at the event last Wednesday. Now, we also met Michael Jacob, father of Deirdre Jacob, who is missing since 28th of July 1998 from Newbridge. Very nice man, very dignified man, and he was grateful, like Jerry Keenan and Imelda were all grateful for the work Radio Espial did as well, and they're, you know, very, very stoic, dignified people, you know, and that's the theme with all those people, the families there as well. So it was a pleasure to meet all of them, and hopefully again they get something gives in the Imelda Keenan case, and for Michael Jacob and his wife and family there in the case of Deirdre, they find out what happened to her as well. Now, we also spoke with Berna Fiden, sister of missing lady Ezra Iron, since February 2011, and Berna travelled from Hackney in London to attend, and she returns in February every year for her sister's anniversary to see if she can move any closer to finding out what became of Ezra Iron. And so pleasure to meet Berna Fiden as well. You know, another very, very strong, dignified lady, and we worked tirelessly, and they suffered for years with the loss of their loved ones there. So just there was 3 other family members then spoke about their missing loved ones, and two relatively higher profile cases, the Imelda Keenan case and Mark Duffy, and then 2 lesser known cases, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. Excuse me. So LEIA Duffy spoke about her brother Mark, and we covered that in a recent episode of Radio Espial, episode 58, and he was a dedicated father, son, and brother, beloved of his family, and she spoke about the devastation of his disappearance, and the mother of his kids died about 2 months after as well, tragically and suddenly, and that was you know, an awful blow, another huge blow for the family. And this is another one of these countless cases which is made even more difficult when, you know, somebody knows something and it's been possible to get a handle on that. And it's a phrase we use so often covering cases in Radio Espial. So we'll let LEIA tell our story there now.
Hello everyone, my name is LEIA Duffy, and I'm here today with my mother Martina and my nephew Evan to acknowledge the disappearance of my eldest brother Mark Duffy, who has been missing from Navan, County Meath since the 3rd of October 2022. Mark was last seen on CCTV at approximately 2:45 p.m. on the afternoon of the Monday 3rd of October. He was limping across the busy Commons Road in Navan, heading in the direction of the railway line and the estate in which we grew up. He was 43 at the time of his disappearance. We officially reported Mark as a missing person in Navan Garda Station on the 13th of October after exhausting every possible avenue, and every attempt to locate Mark had led us nowhere. We initially believed that Mark was with friends, but when we were told that he hadn't collected his most recent welfare payment on that Monday, we instantly knew that this wasn't good and completely out of character. Numerous land and air searches were carried out by An Garda Síochána, Meath Civil Defence and Meath River Rescue also conducted searches of the rivers in Navan, but it yielded nothing, not a trace of Mark anywhere. We then set up a Facebook page to reach as many people as we could to help us to find Mark. So many people turned up to help us in the search for Mark, and to those people we will always be grateful for the love and support that they showed us in those initial weeks. Unfortunately, all efforts failed to give us any answers or clues to Mark's whereabouts. About 8 weeks later, on the day after Mark's 44th birthday, his social welfare card was discovered by a walker in an area that is well used, about 6 kilometres away from the last confirmed sighting of Mark. Follow-up searches of that area failed to give us any more answers, just more questions. How could he have gotten that far with such a bad limp? It would have restricted his movements. We believe on the last day that Mark did collect his payment, his social welfare payment, in Johnstown Post Office. At about 10:45 a.m, he was given a lift to the post office. That same person was one of the last people to speak to Mark on that day, and to this day they have never came forward to any of us to offer any kind of explanation as to what happened on that day. None of the people who spoke with Mark that day have ever reached out to us, and we believe that they could possibly hold some vital answers to the questions about Mark's whereabouts. 12 weeks later, tragedy struck our family again. Mark's son Evan, who was only 16 at the time, found his mother sleeping and could not wake her. She was only 39. She had passed away, leaving behind Mark's 2 children, Evan and Ren, who were now effectively orphans. I cannot tell you the devastation it brought on us as a family, as this was when we really knew that if Mark did not come home now, he never would. He idolised his children and he would just never abandon them. That's when hope began to fade. So then we discovered the National Missing Persons Helpline. Dermot and his amazing team became our new lifeline. They gave us hope again and have been there for us throughout this difficult, heartbreaking journey that we're on to bring our Mark home. Without their continuous support and advice and guidance, I honestly don't know where we would be now. On the darkest of days, they can be the light we need to keep us going and to never, ever, ever lose hope. Mark wasn't a stranger in an unknown location. He would have been really well known in that area, as it's where we grew up. I do not understand how somebody can just vanish in broad daylight. We have more questions than answers, and like all of the families here today, all we want is to bring our loved ones home and put an end to this heartbreaking nightmare. Mark is a father, a son, a brother and an uncle, and his children deserve to know the truth as to what happened to their dad that day. Every day we hope and pray that we will get Mark home. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so that was Leah Duffy talking about her brother Mark, missing since 2022, October 2022. Now, there was 2 lesser known cases, and this is important that were highlighted this year, and their relatives spoke. Now, Jerry Bradley spoke warmly of his brother Alan, who vanished from Maynooth on the 18th of November 1999 without explanation. Now, the website says the 25th of November, but Jerry Bradley was very clear it was the 18th of November. So we'll let Jerry Bradley describe further there the circumstances there.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning. Minister McENTEE, Commissioner Harris, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly the affected families gathered here to mark National Missing Persons Day. Today, I'm sure we gather with heavy hearts and a shared sense of hope. We are here to honour the loved ones who are missing from our lives, but never from our hearts. Each of us carries their own unique story of loss, love, and unwavering hope. It was at this event last year that I realised that 2024 will mark 25 years since our Alan went missing. A generation passed, but the strength and resilience in the face of all the uncertainty that day last year is why I am here today. I'm Jerry Bradley, Alan's brother, and I would like to share some of Alan's story with you. Alan was born in 1975 and the first of us Bradleys to be born in Mullingar after we arrived in 1973, having left Dublin. However, In the preceding years, Dermot and Mary had 6 children, and in total, with our parents, we became the Bradley gang of 11. 5 lads and 4 lassies. We grew up in a happy and boisterous household, always filled with younger siblings and with great parents who taught us that we were all chiefs rather than Indians. Having spent our formative, or indeed feral years, in the wilds of Crooked Wood near Lough Derrivara, Mary, our mother, longed to be near her home village of Leixlip, and we headed back to Maynooth in 1980, where we settled since. Our father, Dermot, hails from a line of boiler makers from Ringaskiddy in Cork, and 4 of my brothers, Alan and I included, went on to serve our time as apprentices in the heating business. The pre-millennium Alan was a colourful character who loved breaking and fixing things, loved to fish, and was delighted when he'd finished serving his time and got a car. Alan was a real entrepreneur, always seeking other avenues aside from plumbing to make a few pound. Alan took on the opportunity to run a small coffee and newspaper shop adjacent to Maynooth railway station in the 90s, and learned through this venture that Maynooth was not fully ready to embrace coffee culture. Alan loved to play his banjo and listen to music. He loved to smoke with a cup of tea and was passionate in all his endeavours. He embraced the New Age traveller culture, loved the ideals of the eco-warriors, was involved in the Glen of the Downs protest in the late 90s. He returned with such enthusiasm for this way of life, and much to the disquiet of my parents, bought himself a caravan, which he parked outside on a quiet road outside of Maynooth. He loved his clothes, a cap, a nice pair of boots, and silver, be it an earring, a bangle, or a silver ring. We became used to Alan heading off on his travels, and when he hadn't returned after going out on Thursday, the 18th of November, 1999, we were not unduly worried for a number of days. However, after checking his usual haunts, we began to get apprehensive for his safety and informed the Gardaí, and thus the search for Alan began. His subsequent description read as follows: 5'9", tall, of slim build, with bluey-green eyes, auburn hair dyed black, lightly bearded, wearing silver ear studs, earrings, and a number of silver rings on both hands, with distinctive heavy red boots and coloured laces. An abiding memory of that time was the searching by the Gardaí of the canal on the Kilcock side of Maynooth. There then followed appeals for possible sightings and subsequent unconfirmed reports of him being spotted here and there, and these being disseminated with the help from various associations and organisations that provided vital assistance in the search for clues. There were trips down the country into the UK, coupled with the inevitable leads, but nothing led us to our Alan. That first Christmas was a particularly stressful time as our family struggled to try to cope with what was happening, and in our case, what wasn't happening. However, on St. Stephen's Day of 1999, a neighbour who knew Alan reported seeing him on the road near to our parents' home. On that same Stephen's Day, his now abandoned caravan went up in flames. Was it Alan who had returned to clear up a few loose ends? We never got to the bottom of it. News reports of bodies being found would and will always stop us in our tracks as we listen intently to the description, the possible age, the hair colour, the height, the approximate time of passing, the clothing, the shoes, the jewellery. The realisation of opposite gender would bring a sigh of relief. The Gardaí kept in regular touch, and I do recall their communication one particularly close match, and the anxious wait until that poor soul was deemed not to be our Alan. My father, Dermot, was continuously phoning the bank about any movement in Alan's account, and it seemed to no avail until the arrival to the home house of a sergeant recently stationed in Maynooth, who prompted Dermot to ring the bank once more. This phone call and the understanding official who answered it provided us with the news that monies had been withdrawn from Alan's account on the 19th of November 1999 on Upper William Street, Limerick. This Friday the 19th was the next day after the fateful night that he had left home to go out. However, the fortunate house call from the sergeant on that day was unfortunately almost a year after Alan had disappeared. Had we been able to obtain this information from his bank in the days and weeks after his disappearance, who knows where we might be now with Alan's case. As I contemplated what I would say here today, acknowledging the effect when someone goes missing was foremost in my mind. Last weekend, my wife Carol and I drove to Kilkenny to visit once again the National Monument to Missing People that was commissioned by the Jojo Dullard Trust. We, along with many other families of the missing, are familiar with this striking sculpture. Each hand was cast from the actual hand of a relative of a missing person by the designer and sculptor Anne Mulrooney. As you walk through the grounds of Kilkenny Castle, just within earshot of the River Nore, you may come across this monument in the quiet little vale where it is thoughtfully placed. Our visit afforded those intended moments of reflection, and as I traced and placed my hand on my hand cast, the memories came back to that millennium time, which was shortly after Alan had disappeared. What also physically materialised was the coldness emanating from my bronze hand. And this brought to mind the absence of the warmth of being able to embrace a family member who was lost, the absence of their presence, the absence of their love, the ever-evolving absence of being able to grieve with the finality that a death brings about, the absence of closure. Not that we ever even achieved that with death. Some 70 to 80 hands I counted that make up the monument. I wonder how many of the owners of those hands are with us, and how many of those relatives of the missing have since been reunited with their loved ones. I previously read an article about loss and the concept of ambiguous loss, and I quote that article's researcher, Pauline Voss. Ambiguous loss is caused when loved ones suddenly vanish, for the families left behind, not knowing whether a loved one is dead or alive defies emotional comprehension. The author went on to describe it as the most stressful of all losses. And in relation to missing persons, she identifies that a person is physically absent, yet psychologically present. What came to my mind was the often resultant opposing state of being physically present, yet psychologically absent. That empty state that our family have experienced, and I'm also sure felt at many times by the people gathered here today. I think of the mental toil and strife of mothers who constantly await the return of their child. The empty chairs and staying within earshot of the door should it ring, particularly at this time of year, will be all too familiar with those gathered here today. Alan is now missing 25 years. This year he is longer gone than his first 24 years with us. And we as a family have learned that there is no right or wrong way to grieve the loss of Alan. And indeed, it is okay to feel those range of emotions: sadness, anger, guilt, confusion, and so on and so on. I would like to thank the Gardaí, the Department of Justice, Melanie Hobbs, my contact, who was so accommodating and helpful, and all the volunteers and associations who ensured that this is a day that will never be missing from the yearly calendar. Before I go, I wish to pay tribute to Mary, our mother, who passed away on the 1st of July 2023 without ever reuniting with her son. Mary, will you go pick cow parsley along the canal? And finally, rest easy in your worries of our Al. Dearest ma'am, as you journey through reverie's best, may your travels be wild, and may you ever rest. Thank you.
Okay, so it was Jerry Bradley talking about his brother Alan, who went missing 25 years ago, and he's actually missing longer than his lifespan now at this stage. So hopefully they get the Bradley family get answers there now on that. So another low profile case, Ronan Lynch's son Daire disappeared in Houston, Texas on 19th of December 2021 after disagreement with his wife. And the working theory is that he took his own life and his remains lie undiscovered somewhere in a large park, the Davis Mountain State Park, Fort Davis, Texas. And he'd heard a vehicle and driven there, and that was found abandoned with his belongings. So we let his father, Ronan Lynch, describe the circumstances there.
Thank you, Mary, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Chief Commissioner and people, invited guests, and especially the family members of missing people. So my name is Ronan Lynch. My wife Paula is here with us in the audience today. We're married 43 years and we live in Dunboyne, County Meath. Unfortunately, Helen is gone, so we can't reference her good win in the election. We have 3 children, and our story really begins in 2021. Our eldest son, Daire, he had a job as a hunting guide, so he spent some of the year in America guiding people, taking people on hunting trips, and some of the time he spent in Ireland during the summer when the season was when this hunting season was open. So his job was to take people on hunting trips, and it was a terrible job really, because he had to take them to pubs in the evening and wine and dine them. And I was often quite envious of his job because I had a boring job in IT. But so as I said, the story began 3 years ago this month. The first we heard of a problem was when his wife messaged me in January, which was January the 5th, I think. And so we connected to Brittany, his wife, and she was very upset, crying. And there had been a dispute just before Christmas, and Daire had left the house with the intention of travelling home to Ireland. He had purchased a ticket, but because COVID was rampant at the time, one of the requirements before taking a flight was to have a COVID certificate, and he realised that he wouldn't have enough time to get this certificate, so he wasn't able to take the flight that he had booked. So he rented a car. He went to visit his employer, who was also living in Texas. He retrieved his rifle and some ammunition and told his friend David that he was heading off to do some target practice. So he had rented a car and drove the 10-hour drive to, he was in West Texas at that time, Houston. He drove to East Texas near El Paso, to a hotel in Davis Mountain State Park. So he checked into the hotel, stayed there a couple of nights, and then checked out on December the 21st. And he hasn't been seen since. When Brittany realised that he hadn't travelled home, because we had asked her, how are things, and she then realised that I hadn't actually made it home. That's when she contacted us, and so she reported him as a missing person to the Texas authorities. Now, the way they operate in America, they have fantastic equipment, and they put everything into an initial search, but it doesn't last for very long. If the initial search doesn't find anything, they stand down the search. So they didn't actually find anything. And the reason actually why they knew that Daire was in the Davis Mountain State Park was that his rental car wasn't returned. So the rental company they were able to trace the car because they had a tracker. So they traced the car to this hotel car park. The car was found in the hotel car park. It was unlocked. It had all his belongings in it, including his passport. It had a Christmas present for me. And it had his passport, but it didn't have his rifle or the ammunition. So we suspected the worst, as you can understand. So when we heard about his appearance, our first inclination was to travel there and do some sort of a search ourselves. But the Department of Foreign Affairs had been in touch with us on several occasions, and I'll talk about them later, They explained to us that the terrain is very difficult, and the rangers in that park, they didn't really like the idea of people going off and searching and disappearing off the known trails, because you could end up having a second search being started. So we decided then that maybe it was best not to travel over. So what we did then was we kind of we tended to, well, actually that's the past. That was the situation now is that Daire's remains are somewhere in that state park. To give you some idea of the size, it's 2,700 acres. It's about 2.5 times the size of the Phoenix Park, so it's quite a big area. So, as I was saying, our view is that this is now in the past. The thing about the past is you can't change it, and you can't go back to the past. So what we've decided, what we realized was that there was no point in us asking these questions for which there were no answers, such as why, what if. So that was, that helped us to basically to accept the situation and to move on. So nowadays as you know, we live in the present. We don't live in the past. We have other children to be with, and a year ago our first grandchild was born, and she brings a lot of joy and happiness into our lives. We constantly pray for Daire. We believe that's the best thing we can do for him, and because we've been given this very heavy cross, we also believe that we've been given the graces to carry this cross. As Christians, we're a hopeful people, and as I said, we have a very strong faith, where we realize that this is a short life, and our focus is on the next life, where we know we will meet Daire again. And that's why we are looking forward as a hopeful people. I want to thank Brittany for her courage in reporting Daire missing and for reaching out to us. Niamh Clark and Daniel McCarthy in Department of Foreign Affairs were very helpful in the early days. And also the local Sergeant Barry O'Connor from Ashburn Garda Station, he was also very good to us. We did give a DNA swab. We had a swab taken, and that's now with the FBI. And our brief now is actually just to wait to see what news, if any news will ever come from Texas. So thank you for listening to this story today. And there was one thing we noticed. There are some certain songs that we had to remove from the playlist because we have a Spotify playlist, and one of them was Time to Say Goodbye, and the other one was You're Always on My Mind. So we had to take them away, and there's one song that strikes a chord with me. Hopefully it might strike a chord with the other people who are missing people. It's a song by Don McLean, and the lyrics go something like this. I've heard about people like me, but I never made the connection. They walk one road to set them free and find they've gone the wrong direction. But there's no need for turning back, because all roads lead to where I stand. And I believe I'll walk them all, no matter what I may have planned. Thank you.
Okay, so that was Ronan Lynch talking about his son Daire still missing there in Fort Davis, Texas. So there are two low-profile cases there, and hopefully they can be solved. It's important there. Those cases are highlighted there as well. So we get on to the Unidentified Human Remains database next. But just Mick, any thoughts on that there, on what we just saw there?
I think I'm trying to think of last year's event and this year's event, and I know we talked about, it was saying to the minister that there needed to be a higher profile. I think I've seen definitely a step up this year compared to last year. Last year, I got the sense it was more, you have to forgive me, like a social event, whereas there was more construction and a sense of purpose this year, and particularly with the amount of relatives who were allowed to come up and directly to camera tell their story. And I don't get the sense that we had that last year in 2023, and I think that's been a development this year, and I'd like to see more of that, because at least for the relatives who can tell the story of their loved ones, whether they're missing or whatever is happening in the case, I think that's it's really an important event in itself for them, because, and as you say, particularly in cases where the person publicly hasn't had the amount of publicity that other cases have had, and it's kind of like their moment to get up and talk about their loved ones. And I think REGINA, LEIA, were you could sense the heaviness and the burden they were carrying. That is very powerful to people. And when we give out that phrase, someone knows more than they're saying, that also carries that weight that the relative expresses to camera in an event like this, that carries to that person who knows something that they're not speaking about and not coming forward about, and that weight is transferred. And this is why events like this are really important.
Or even people who know about somebody who knows something as well, that
Exactly.
because what they often say is like that, allegiances change and all the rest
People,
of us,
and relationships, marriages, boyfriend, girlfriends, people were younger, people change, they move on, they're with different partners, and they go, oh my God, I have to talk about that, and that's what a lot of this about, and that's what we experience in a lot of cases that we cover, particularly historical cases that we're not dealing with a few weeks, a few months, we're dealing with years, and sadly for a lot of families, we're now dealing with decades.
And just even like some of the cases there, like where, I mean, there's more time has passed now since their lifespan.
Exactly. If a 20-year-old goes missing, we have cases now we're looking at, and we've covered that. We're looking and talking and dealing with families where it's 20, 30, 40 years. 40, for God's sake, 40 years.
Yeah, sure. Even the Operation Trace cases now, I mean, more time has passed since Fiona Pender's lifespan, Deirdre Jacob, Fiona Sinnott, Annie McCarrick, it's...
And you were talking...
Judge Dullard,
I suppose the other thing that people will have to forgive us for doing, because we are of a certain vintage, let's be good to us, and we can forget that we were born in the 60s, some of us in the early 70s.
Or 70s.
You see, you're luckier than me, early 70s. And we forget that there are people listening to this program really interested in the stuff that we're doing, out of our 3,000 plus subscribers now. And it's easy for us to forget. Those people weren't even born at the time of some of the people and families that you've just heard talking about their loved ones gone missing. Those those viewers weren't even born. That's why we do what we do. That's why it's important.
And just, I think as well, it's bringing, like, I think some of the stuff is important to put a personality and show the person as well. Like, I mean, some of the kids, so they're not just a grainy face in a milk carton or something. That they spoke about the person and their personality and their the things, the great things about them, things that drove them mad and so on. Like, and you know what I mean, things like that. It's it's important to put a bit of colour on the person as well.
We never shy away from that, and we never mix sensationalism, speculation with
Yeah.
relatives, our core value. And I think we've demonstrated this, particularly over the last year or two. Every episode we put together, the families and the person, as best we can do, is front and centre. Even the features that we do, where we're using other material externally that we can't necessarily control, we edit that in production, and when we present it, we present it, we feel, with our Radio Espial focus, where the relatives are front and centre. And if we come across content or material that we're allowed to use, and the family or the missing person or the murdered person, whatever case we're covering, we feel isn't front and centre, it's a bit too, we decide, no, we're not going to cover that if it doesn't fit with our remit and the values that we hold here on Radio Espial. Brian, continue.
Right. Okay. I'd just like to say as well, I think it's important that the last case there as well, because oftentimes cases like that can just be neglected. They just go, oh yeah, and everybody, you know, you don't know what happened, and everybody's entitled to the same. They should be entitled to the same resources to
absolutely
try and solve things. Like we've seen several cases there where things have just been dropped because of prejudice and assumptions there, like about people. Like, you know,
people are you know. And I'm not speaking about any particular case. They committed suicide, and sure, what can you do? That's people's choices, and there are so many cases where we've discovered that didn't happen. Actually, there was something more nefarious involved. You know, unfortunately, you can't just assume without knowing factually that actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll move on then. So
yes.
This important stuff now, the Unidentified Human Remains Database, or UHR for short. Now, Helen McENTEE marked Missing Persons Day with the announcement of the enhanced Unidentified Human Remains Database. Now, Kathleen O'Sullivan, as I said, of the Coroner Operations Policy Team within the Department of Justice, elaborated about the UHR database and steps to improve a searchable database that contains information about unidentified human remains have been launched, you know, to mark the day as well. Now, just a quick summary from Helen McENTEE. This latest development allows users to search the data by coroner district, year and gender, further facilitating the identification and location of missing persons and the possibility of closure for their loved ones if you can make the identifications. Now, the database brings together information on unknown remains held by coroners across the country, and was first launched by her department last year, and it contains information on 48 cases now. And I presume that'll be growing over time there. Now, she outlined the enhancements that have now been introduced. So there's a long quote there, but just to take out the main points there. The first ever instance was May 2023, and they've been seeking to enhance the quality of that going onwards. These quotes are available. You can find them if you want to get the full one. And that the database is user-friendly, simple to navigate, you know, all important stuff there. And as well, earlier this year, visual records, including facial images and visuals of items found with the remains, were included in the data set, were provided by the coroners. So that's important as well. And the Minister for State in the Department of Justice, James Brown, stressed the importance of families who are still looking for loved ones, drawing strength from one another as well. Now, he said he's Minister for State, spoke as well as the minister there. So you know, similar sentiments there as well from him, and he thanked the people for coming as well. So just that's to mention that the Minister of State was there as well as the Minister for Justice. Now, another quote as well. Garda Commissioner Drew Harris, he said the event shone a light on those who were missing, and gives us pause to remember those who were lost and whose absence is deeply felt by those who were. By all those who love them. Now, again, that is very true there. And so we'd just like to say as well, in anyone with any information about any missing person is urged to contact the Garda station or call the Garda confidential line on 1-800-666-111. That's 1-800-666-111. Or if you know the local Garda station, you can always call there as well. But I think the confidential line is probably the best way to go there. No, in a minute we'll have our final thoughts there in a second, and then we'll finish up with the roll of names. And there's a lot of there's just so many names in there, and in fact, possibly most of them aren't out in the public domain much at all. There's very little about most of those cases. So that was something I did mention to Ellen McENTEE about getting, and I know it's not all entirely on her. It's up, it's up to everybody to share things out and acquaint ourselves with these cases, myself included. I don't know a lot of those cases at all. So I mean, it's important the lesser known cases get more coverage as well for their families and so on. So I think that's it really, Mick. Anything you wanted to mention on the database or anything there?
Well, other than what I said, that it's been a long time coming, and I'm still aware there are still a lot of developments that have to go in it.
Yeah. And
I know the database we have ain't nothing compared to the database that the Department of Justice has access to. But I still feel if we can have 80 plus 6 cases that we've directly dealt with on our database, what the fuck is the Department of Justice doing if they only have 48 cases? Now, I know we don't have DNA and access, but hey, if 1 or 2 people can do it here, why are we dealing with a database that only has 48? When I look at other countries, Spain, Portugal, the UK,
English.
the United States, China, India, Malaysia, Singapore, who have databases like this, and there are thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of people on those databases for this kind of forensic identity work.
Yeah. So I hope they keep developing. It sounds like they are keen to develop this thing better late than never. Look at. I think if you expect that, this time next year, it should be a hell of a lot more cases on it there anyway,
because that's where something like this also helps. Cases like Peter Bergman that we covered. Peter Bergman, if I can remember it, I'll put it in the description. Peter Bergman was a man, we believe, from Germany, Austria, who came here. We never quite know the circumstances of his case. His body was found. A suspicion that maybe he came here to end his life in a peaceful way, in his own way, and he's never been identified. That isn't his name. That's a name that was placed upon him. We don't know. But it's databases like this that can help his true family find out what actually happened to their loved one who went missing. And that's why this is important.
Yeah. I mean, it could be as well. He didn't want to be identified either.
No. He wanted to quietly. It looks like he wanted to quietly slip away on his own terms.
Yeah, he could even have told his family, "That's it. Don't leave it at that." But you don't know. But that's it. To be definitely it's the way to go to try and solve things anyway. So I think that's it. Should will there. I think, Mick.
Yeah, and Brian, thanks for all your work on this episode to cover National Missing Persons Day. We did literally, and that's where we are now. I always take pleasure or satisfaction in the sense that, we're having a go at people who maybe don't do enough to highlight Missing Persons Day, and then I'll look back at, well, what did we do last year for Missing Persons Day? Well, okay, we covered our usual cases, but what did we actually do? I thought, oh, well, hang on, we have to take a bit of the brunt here. I thought we ran a 4 or 5 minute piece showing faces of people and missing loved ones, and that's all we did. And we've also got to step up to the mark, and that's why it was important for us this year, and there's been a bit of planning ahead of this event to get Brian to the event because I couldn't attend, living here in the Netherlands. And a big shout out to Catherine,
yeah.
ex-Metropolitan Police detective, who helped us set this up and helped us, get you there.
Yeah.
And we're very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And somebody,
sincere thanks to Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the other families also mentioned to me their thanks to all of the people in the background who attend with families as almost like a courtier or an officer to accompany them there. All of the Gardaí, and they're not necessarily official Gardaí. Some of them are former Gardaí and specialise in this area. A lot of them are not, and that's the Gardaí liaison officers who often travel with the families to events like this, and get them, particularly the speakers, people, and introduce them to support services and that kind. So a big shout out to all those, and that's something we're learning about. We're hoping in the new year, we'll talk about this more later, to maybe have someone in that sphere on next year in an interview, and that's something you're going to be hearing about in our next episode as our plans for who we want to have and where we want to go in 2025. But Brian, we'll have one more episode next week before we all wrap up for the holiday period on the channel, because we all need a rest, as we all do. Thank you once again, all our subscribers, and the comments and the channel support. This episode is probably going to go out this weekend as we speak. We're recording on the 13th, so it's probably going to go out on the 14th, 15th, Saturday, Sunday. There will be one more, and please understand, we all need to take a break. There will be one more episode, and I'm hoping to get that out midweek next week before we finish up. But I'll speak to you more in the next episode about that. Brian, thank you again.
Thanks, Mick.
Let's wrap
Thanks
up
all
there.
for tuning in, and all the best, folks. Stay safe and all the best.
Okay, God bless. Take care, everyone.
God bless.
Moments change, time moves so fast. Here today, not built to last. We all believe in forever, but right now it's hard to see it through. 'Cause you're out there missing, out on a sunny subway. You're out there flying up above all this cold. If I close my eyes, I still get lost in your smile. You're out there missing, you're out there missing.